Hello everyone, and welcome back to my progress series, 1 Year of Drawing. In this video, we'll be going back and looking at everything that I did for this past week related to cylinders. Getting the correct perspective, getting the curves to look correct, all that kind of stuff. I first tried to do a cylinder using 2-point perspective. You can see that here. I have my lines coming out from my 2 vanishing points. I really didn't like how this one turned out. It was really hard, number one, just because of the smaller space that I limited myself to, and also the 2-point perspective it's just harder to work with in my opinion. So from there, I moved on to using just 1 point. Stuck with 1 point throughout the entire rest of everything that I did. So these are a few examples that I made using just 1 point perspective. I'm pretty happy with how this one on the side turned out, as well as this one here in the middle, but not so much this one off to the right. I'm trying to decide whether or not it was the perspective that you're kind of viewing it at, with it being off to the right hand side of where you are, that kind of makes it look weird, or if I messed up on my curves around the bottom here, a little too much like a diamond. I think this one could have been improved a little by the bottom rounding out a little more, kind of like this. So I'll have to keep that in mind next time and see if maybe bringing it out a little farther helps it look any better. Okay, moving on from there, I think this one turned out pretty okay. It's almost just a mirror image of the one here to the left, except the curves around the bottom of this one look a lot more natural than this one does. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this one turned out. I just have 2 more. There's not really a lot to show on these. I mean, they're all pretty much the same except for the last few. With this one here, I tried to bring the curves out a little more instead of having them so close to the guidelines around the bottom here. Moving on from that one, I have this one here. It's just about the same as this one up top, except it's from a different perspective. Instead of looking from the bottom up, you're looking from the top down on this one. But yeah, pretty happy with how this one turned out too. Except I feel like the bottom is a little too round. It should be more of a ellipse like that. But it checks out with the lines that I made extending from my vanishing points. I think it's just a me thing, where I think it looks wrong, but for the most part it looks pretty good. Moving on from there, I tried something a little different with these two. I was looking into different ways on like how to draw cylinders, so I didn't have to construct the entire prism every time. And I really like this method that I found. I think this is going to be my go-to from now on, whenever I try to draw a cylinder. All it is a perspective point. You make 2 lines extending out from that vanishing point, and those are just your outsides of your cylinder, kind of the long sides of it. And then after that, you draw a line, try to get it as close to the middle as you possibly can. The middle being the distance in between these 2 lines. You want it to be about the same when you extend a line from one to the other. Should be equal distances. The middle line's purpose is to show you where your center is for both of your bases. So using these 3 lines, it shows you how large your base needs to be, as well as where your center should be. And then using all of those together, you can form your base depending on what your perspective is. And this is the part that I kind of really like about this, is that you can change the way your cylinder looks by changing the shape of the base. So for example, in this one here to the left, the bases are more circular. I tried to get them as close to being true circles as I could. And then this one here on the right, I actually made my bases a little more elliptical, or a little more like an oval rather than a circle. It changes how it's positioned in space, as well as the direction in which it might be moving, depending on whether or not you want your cylinder to be moving. For example, I can add in some motion lines here that all kind of go back to the vanishing point to show that it's moving out and away from this vanishing point. For example, someone might be throwing this and it might be flying at the reader of like a comic or something like that. I really like this method of using the vanishing point and just the 3 lines and kind of constructing it from there and having a little more flexibility with how it looks, rather than feeling like you have to stick to your prism that you made before you even made your cylinder. Where your cylinder, the shape of your cylinder, is kind of dependent on the shape of your prism that you made first. So if you mess up the look of your prism, or you're not really sure how to get this type of cylinder that you want from a prism, then you're not going to end up with the cylinder looking how you want it to look, because it's going to be off due to your prism being off. But there's no way for you to know that until you finish drawing it. So you might get one that looks good, but I feel like it's a lot less likely than if you try to stick to using this method. So I would recommend using this method if you needed to draw a cylinder for something. So that wraps up everything that I was interested in going over related to cylinders. Again, there's not really a lot to talk about. It's just a cylinder. It's just a can. It's just a bottle, whatever you want it to be. There's not really a lot to it. And then you do the thing and you make the thing. So that's all there is to it. So that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. Thank you greatly for sticking around and watching till the end of the video if you did. If you're interested in following along with the series, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Comment down below whether or not you think I can improve on something, whether you think I can add something to my videos to make them better. I'm still kind of new to this, so I'm open to any and all suggestions. Don't be afraid to leave something down there. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.